Hello, I am Clara Iannotta, and I am sorry that I could not be there with all of you in Vienna, but I am very thankful to the Musikverein and Wien Modern for focusing on my music this year. And during Wien Modern, you will actually listen to 5 of my pieces that I wrote within the past 7 years, and they all belong to different times of my life. And if you really listen to all of these pieces, you will also see a tiny bit how I changed, how my music changed. Just to give you a tiny bit of context so that you understand what inspires me and how I write music and how I think about sound in general. I come from an interesting family in which my father didn't really like to buy us toys when we were children. I have 3 other siblings and we were very different, but my father didn't like to buy us toys, and so instead he taught us how to make them, how to build them. He showed us how things were made, so whenever there was an object in my house that would break, he would show us how you could repair it. So we started to learn how the material worked, and then at some point I remember that he really just offered us the possibility of either repairing what already existed or taking that material and just building something new out of it. And I remember that when I was a child, I started to first trying to recreate, as a child can do, objects, or let's say toys that I saw at my friend's house, at school, on TV, and then slowly I actually started to understand how material worked, and I started to imagine a toy that I wanted to have, and then I would just like take everything that was surrounding me in order to make that toy. And for me, it's very interesting to think about that time of my life because it taught me how to look at the object disconnected from its function, but instead to look at the object for the potential that it can be, what it can become. And when I started to write music, my approach was pretty much the same. As soon as I understood how sound works, how instrument worked, how material worked, instead of starting from an instrument to produce sound, I started to just create a sonic image in my mind. And that means that sometimes the instruments, they were not enough to reproduce that image, okay? And so instead I would just like take everything that was surrounding me, and that is why in several of my pieces, even the pieces that you will hear during Wien Modern, you will see objects. And so it happened in the past that if the instrument was not able to reproduce the sounds, I would prepare it, okay? I would attach things on it, or whatever could help me to find that sound. Sometimes if these preparations were not enough, I would use objects, everyday objects, and if they also were not enough, I would just try to build my instruments so that I could just create them. But this is pretty much my approach to the sound. It comes not from an instrument, but instead it comes from a sonic image. And now this sonic image changed throughout the years. When I was young, when I started to compose, I remember that for me everything was extremely beautiful and really there was so much light also in my music. I loved resonance and everything was so joyful. So if you listen to my early music, you will notice that everything was sparkling. And then in 2014, I had a crisis. I remember very, very vividly that I wrote an ensemble piece that is called Intent on Resurrection. You will not hear this piece in Wien Modern, but what happened is that it was played in Paris, where I am right now, and in a concert where the Ensemble was also playing concertini by Lachenmann, and the whole festival was dedicated to Nono. And I remember that I was talking during the dress rehearsal with Helmut Lachenmann, and we were talking about Nono, and Lachenmann, who was one of Nono's students told me that Nono was always sending him postcards, and it was always written that he was in a crisis. And at that time I was 30 years old, and I remember that I told Lagerman, I really think that it's super important for artists to go through crisis, because it's like it changes the way you see art in general and so on. So it's important, although I never had one. And Lagerman responded to me in a very beautiful way. He said, well, it depends what comes after a crisis. And after that, and I'm really not making it up, it really happened. After that, I spent 11 months without being able to write music. And I remember that I kept just thinking, oh my God, what is going to come next? What is going to be the next piece? And you will listen to that next piece, because Troglodyte Angels Clank by is one of the pieces that has been programmed. That you will listen to this piece, which really create a completely different. I was a completely different composer after this crisis, and my music started to become quite dark, and I started to really like raw sounds. I lost the resonance, and not because I wasn't interested in. I thought that I just didn't need it at that time. And I am saying this because the relationship that I have with my music is extremely self-centered, okay? But also it's almost like it's the way I have to process my thoughts, to process the world around me, but also to get to know myself. I really believe that in myself there are places where sounds can reach and words cannot. And whenever I write a piece of mine, I discover something new about myself. And I remember that, as soon as I started to understand this kind of relationship that I had with music, that I still have with music, it was very interesting, because really, although difficult, because sometimes composing becomes really, really hard, I started to understand who I was, and it was great. And then during COVID, which was already traumatizing for everybody, I had cancer. And it was very interesting, because it kind of broke me. Not just because it's a trauma, of course, but you're forced to change. It's such a big event in your life that your whole body changes, the way you think, your relationship with time changes. And so, because my relationship with music is so symbiotic, once I finished my treatments and once I kind of started to get better, I started to compose again, because I had to take a little break while I was sick. I started to think, okay, who am I now? I don't know who I am anymore, because I still have to rediscover myself. But the only thing I know is that I cannot write the same music I used to write before, because I'm a different person. So I started to look for myself, for who I am, and so from 2020 until 2022, I remember that I composed several pieces that you will not hear, but I composed several pieces in which I always felt that I was a bit deaf and a bit blind. I really started to say, I don't know where I'm going, I have no idea. And then at the end of 2022, I thought that I really found myself. And then my mom died, and this completely broke my heart. It really completely broke my heart. It's almost like time shattered. And I started to say, okay, I thought that I went somewhere, and then my whole life changed again. And in that time, I decided I wrote this piano concerto that you will hear on the 31st of October, which is called The Purple Fuchsia, Bled Upon the Ground. The piano concerto is a bit of a different piece in my production, in the sense that I really started to explore the concept itself, which is brutal, the loss of a mom. And so my music that has always been, I mean, most of the past years, quiet and really trying to work on details, it became this huge scream, let's say, and this burial ceremony, because actually the piano concerto is a burial ceremony in which there is the piano that it keeps just fighting with the orchestra itself, that is almost putting earth onto the piano, and so it just like it keeps crushing the piano sound as much as possible, and the piano has to somehow be able to come out of it. So these are some of the pieces that you will hear in these concerts, and then there is one particular concert that is called the Composition Lab with me, and in which there are some musicians of the university in Vienna, the EÖTVÖS, who will play not only my music, two pieces of mine, but also music by my students. And I have to say that I really, really want to thank again the Musikverein and Wien Modern for allowing me for trusting me also to give these opportunities, this fantastic opportunity to my students. One of the reasons why I think that I am a good composer, or any way that I really profited of my time as a student, it was because where I studied, they really allowed me to have the best musicians, the best platforms, the best opportunities in order to listen to my music, to understand what worked and what didn't work. And so the possibility to do the same with my students through such an incredible platform, which is one of the most important festivals of Wien Modern, in one of the most important halls in the world, at the Musikverein, this really, really is important with them for my students. I chose these 3 students mostly because they were very different. I had 11 students actually last year, and they all wanted, of course, to write for this occasion, and I had to make a choice based on aesthetics, and also I tried to give to other students possibilities and so on. And so I'm very happy of the work that they have done, and I'm very much looking forward to listening to this concert all together. So thank you so much again. And I will see all of you and more in a few weeks in Vienna.